name George Engel.
Okay, good. Should have been that. I want to welcome everybody here, and I want to make it very, very clear that we're here to learn, and that we're here to have a good time, and we're here to enjoy ourselves. Before I formally begin, I'd like to acknowledge everyone here for attending. I hope that in some small way you get something out of this. It's positive. There are some individuals I'd like to select out for special acknowledgement. A personal assistant of mine who has helped me a great deal with all of the kinds of logistics and things that simply need to happen to make this happen is Mr. Chris Thomas over there. Chris, thank you. Another individual who assists me in many ways and currently is operating the video camera is another friend, Mr. Derek Pivoto. Some special guests are close friends of my wife and mine, Tommy and Terry Davis. Welcome. Thank you. I have the great fortune of having my extended family with me tonight. Mr. Pete and Mrs. Hilda Meyer. And I will never forget when I was married last year, my grandmother-to-be before the ceremony, afterwards at the reception, came up to me and being from Louisiana said, "You are my grandson." My mom Turner, welcome. My sister-in-law is here. We'll get to the speech eventually, don't worry. Darlene Harrison, thank you. With John, I'm sorry, John. I'll get it right eventually. Two nieces are here as well. I'd like to personally acknowledge them, Amy Harrison and Brooke Ann Harrison. I would also like to formally thank all of the members of the Student Government Association of Lamar University at Orange. My understanding is that you all had to sign in to get in. Is that correct? That was the official charge. Student Government Association, Ms. Pennick, Mr. Hernandez, thank you. Anyone whom I have inadvertently left out, my sincere apologies. Put it on my tab. Don't put it on American Express. Okay. In the summer of 1977, I was involved in a fortunate yet unfortunate incident. Prior to that, in the spring of 1977, I was 17 years old, so I'm not as old as I look now. In the spring of 1977, I was pitching high school baseball. I was 6'4", which I still am, and I threw a baseball 95 miles per hour. That's somewhere in the neighborhood that Mr. Nolan Ryan throws the baseball. And the Houston Astros saw fit to invite me to spring training camp in the spring of 1977. For some unknown reason, I got sick for a week and had to miss school, and I went to Florida. It was tragic. While in Florida, pitching with the Houston Astros, I did rather well.
and they offered me a contract. I took advantage of that and signed a letter of intent. But you see, the problem was that I was a junior in high school, and I wanted to complete my high school degree. And the letter of intent was good after graduation. The spring training took place in February of 1977. In July of 1977, I went swimming. It was a hot summer day. I grew up in a small town in southeast Texas. It's become public knowledge through various newspaper articles, so I shall repeat it. Wharton, Texas, which is southwest of Houston. Many of us were swimming in an irrigation canal that hot July afternoon. And the third time that I dove in, I broke my neck. The result was the instantaneous transformation of a young man who was able to throw a baseball at 95 miles an hour into a man who was unable to scratch his nose. I was bleeding, I was hurting, and I was somewhat upset, to put it mildly, at what had occurred. Everybody around me lost their cool. Fortunately, I kept mine, and an ambulance arrived. The result was over 3 months of an intensive, painful, and to this day painful, rehabilitation process, which has never ended. Many times I am asked, do I face problems every day? And the answer is yes, the same ones that you face. It is really no different. Many times I am asked if I'm sad that I broke my neck. Did I go back, and were I afforded the opportunity to go back, I wouldn't do it again. But I know that the opportunities, the challenges, the delights, the rewards, and the specialness which has occurred in my life as a direct result of breaking my neck, I would not trade for the world. Some people look at me when I say, in some ways, I'm glad that I broke my neck. And the expression on their face is, the man's elevator doesn't quite go to the top floor. And they may be right. But if it doesn't go to the top floor, then that's not where I want to be. I'd rather be below. I graduated high school. I actually began high school and finished my senior year while still in the hospital. I graduated in May of 1978, on time with my class. I then began junior college at Wharton County Junior College, a two-year university, community college, in the fall of 1978. One of the courses that I began taking at the very beginning was one which I have taught for 8 years now, Introduction to Psychology. Is there anybody out there who's had that? Oh, about 85%. While taking that course, I read a book entitled Man's Search for Meaning. Man's Search for Meaning is written by a man who is a very dear friend of mine, a very dear colleague. His name is Dr. Viktor Frankl. I read that book as part of the requirements for Introduction to Psychology. I ended up reading 22 more books. For those of you who are enrolled in my courses wherein you have to read one and write a term paper, please lower the complaint level. While reading that book, I was touched deeply by the similarities between Dr. Frankl's life and my own. I wrote him a letter. Much to my amazement, within a matter of a few days, he wrote me back from Vienna, Austria. I was touched. He was honored that I had written him a letter, a world-famous psychologist, psychiatrist, and mental health professional. He said, "You have utilized the principles of my theory of self-esteem, motivation, and meaning in life without ever having read about them. That validates, that empowers me to know that what I wrote is true. Thank you." I was astounded. Therein began a correspondence which has lasted to this day, and Viktor Frankl and I have had the tremendous honor, at least it's been an honor on my part, to share the stage with him on 5 distinct occasions, traveling all around the world. In the summer of 1983, I was beginning my junior year in college. I had transferred to the University of Houston. I was invited to speak before an international conference of psychologists in West Germany. It is now Germany, but at the time it was Germany. In Munich. Quite an honor. I didn't know whether to go or not. They were paying for the trip, so I decided to go. I didn't know what they wanted this little junior in college to talk about. But I supposed it was something about meaning in life and overcoming tragedy and transforming that into triumph. And so I went. For the first time after several years of telephone correspondence and written correspondence, I met Dr. Viktor Frankl face to face. It was a tremendous honor. The day that I was to give my speech, Dr. Frankl and I were sitting out at an outdoor patio area at the University of Munich, having coffee, like I am right now. And we were talking, and suddenly a question popped into my head. I could not get the question out of my head. It seemed so simple and yet so profound. Here I was invited to speak before a group of professionals, and I couldn't even answer a simple question. And then finally, reality hit, and it said, "You have the man sitting across the table from you. Why don't you ask him right now?" And there, on that morning where it was cold and overcast, I looked at Dr. Frankl and his theory, which is known as logotherapy. I looked at him and I said, "Dr. Frankl, what is logotherapy?" Characteristically of the man, a very gentle and kind man, he took a sip of coffee and told me the following story. He said there was once a man who came to a foreign land. He was a traveler, and he happened upon 3 stonecutters. As he approached the first stonecutter, he looked at that stonecutter and said, "Sir, what are you doing?" The first stonecutter, annoyed, looked up and said, "What does it look like I'm doing? I'm cutting stone. Leave me alone." Okay. He then approached the second stonecutter, posing the same question. "Sir, what are you doing?" The second stonecutter said, "I'm shaping a cornerstone. What does it look like I'm doing?" The traveler then went to the third stonecutter and said, "Sir, what are you doing?" The third stonecutter gently set down the mallet, gently set down the chisel, looked up at the traveler, and said, "I am building a cathedral." And that, Jerry, is what logotherapy is all about. It is looking toward the future. It is having a goal, having a dream, having the self-esteem, the self-confidence, and the motivation to make it come true. was about to give my speech, and Dr. Frankl and I were behind a curtain similar to the one behind me now. I was under the impression I would be addressing an audience about the size of you right here, 250 people. And after the curtain parted, I walked out onto the stage and looked before an audience of 10,000. I got nervous. And I told myself internally, kid, you better be good. I didn't quite know what to say, but I opened with that story. Logotherapy, which is Dr. Frankl's theory of self-esteem, motivation, and meaning in life, literally translates to help through meaning. If we have a reason, if we have a purpose to what we are doing, then we can get through a lot of trial and a lot of trouble and a lot of tribulation. But to really understand logotherapy and to understand the purpose of why I'm here and hopefully why you are here tonight, you need to understand a little bit about Dr. Viktor Frankl himself. Dr. Viktor Frankl was born in 1905 in Vienna, Austria. He grew up in Vienna, Austria, and during the European equivalent of 7th grade, he was taking a biology class. The biology teacher looked up and told the class, in the final analysis, life is nothing but a process of combustion. The young Viktor Frankl leapt to his feet in the middle of class and said, then what meaning does life have? The teacher was annoyed, but Frankl passed the class. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become a doctor. He was pondering questions such as death, freedom, isolation, motivation, self-esteem, and meaning in life at an age at which most of us are wondering whether or not we're going to get our allowances on time. Viktor Frankl is a very, very profound man. At the age of 21, he earned his Doctor of Medicine degree, an MD. Oh man, 21 years old. He became a follower of Sigmund Freud. And in fact, at the age of 21, published his first professional article in the International Journal for Psychoanalysis under Sigmund Freud. However, Dr. Frankl, within 1 year, became somewhat disillusioned with Sigmund Freud's theory and said, it is not all sexual pleasure, there's more to it than that. And although he and Sigmund Freud were close personal friends, they had a falling apart within 1 year. At the age of 22, Dr. Frankl published his second article in another international journal, the International Journal for Psychotherapy, under Alfred Adler. Alfred Adler maintained the primary motivator of human behavior is to search for power, not pleasure. After 1 year, Frankl became disillusioned and said, it's not power that makes us work. It's not power that makes us tick, nor is it pleasure. I'm not sure what it is. And so in the words of Viktor Frankl, what he did was, I threw out the grand teachings of my teachers and began listening to my patients and learning from them. When he listened to his patients, he developed logotherapy, which states that the primary motivator of human behavior is to search for meaning in life, a purpose to our existence, a reason for why we are here, whatever that may be. This was about 1938, 1939 in Europe. Viktor Frankl is a Jew. For those of you who know much about history, to be a Jew at that time in the history of the world in Europe was not a good place to be. The Nazis were taking over. They were bombing and killing, and World War II had actually started. Viktor Frankl faced a very difficult decision. As a professional, he was given a visa to immigrate to Great Britain from the United States. He didn't know what to do because, you see, he was the only family member given a visa. His wife had no visa. His children had no visa. His parents had no visa. He faced a very difficult decision. Viktor Frankl, in his search for what he should do, went to the synagogue in downtown Vienna. The synagogue had been reduced to rubble by the bombings of the Nazis. Outside the synagogue had been a stone tablet of the Ten Commandments. The only commandment which was still legible after the bombings was honor thy father and mother. The young Viktor Frankl took this as a message and stayed in Europe. He did not immigrate. The result was that he was imprisoned at 2 concentration camps, Auschwitz and Dachau. They are referred to as concentration camps. They are more appropriately known as death camps. 6 million Jews were killed, 10 million people killed. Viktor Frankl was a survivor. He was the survivor. He regarded Auschwitz and Dachau as the personal testing ground of his theory, that the primary motivator of human behavior was the search for meaning in life. In the concentration camps, he saw people hurt, stabbed, injured, steal, and do exactly what Freud had said they would do, to lower themselves to an animalistic level of functioning. However, Viktor Frankl also saw people rise above their circumstance and become virtual saints in the face of adversity. And he knew that his theory made sense. When the Allied forces liberated the concentration camps in 1945, Viktor Frankl was the only living family member to make it out. His wife had been killed. His children had been killed. His parents had been killed. Within 9 consecutive days, Viktor Frankl wrote his most widely distributed and published book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's very readable, very understandable, and Viktor Frankl wrote it almost to get this emotional trauma out of his system. 9 consecutive days, and he wrote a 200-page book. My 190 students in the audience, please hold back your complaints about your term papers. If he did that in 9 days, you can do a term paper in 3 months. I know that you can. Viktor Frankl is a very compassionate man, but he is also a very abrupt man. And I'd like to tell you a little bit of a story to bring you on board about what he's like. He and I were at a press conference in Munich, West Germany in 1983. European national television was there. The cameras were rolling, as several are on me tonight. A reporter stood up and said, "Dr. Frankl, what is the basic idea of your theory?" And there before the international press, Dr. Frankl looked at the reporter and said, "Obviously, young man, you haven't done your homework. Sit down. Next question." The reporter sat down. In 1985, Dr. Frankl traveled to the United States of America, to Houston, Texas, where he and I had the great honor of sharing a stage together, giving a speech. On the way to the speech, we met a woman. She did not have the money to buy a ticket to get in. But as we were walking toward the auditorium, she kept hollering, "Dr. Frankl, please stop. Please stop." And he did. Both of us did. We went over to the woman, and she wanted to tell him how much his writing had meant to her. She had read every word he had ever written that had been translated into English. She said, "Your writings have influenced my life. They have changed my life. They have made my life worth living. Thank you. I couldn't afford a ticket, and I wanted a chance to personally say thank you very much." Meanwhile, all around us, security were pushing us on the shoulder. "Dr. Frankl, Mr. Long, you all need to hurry. The 3,000 people in the auditorium need to hear you speak. You're late." Dr. Frankl turned around and said, "They paid, they can wait." This woman needs me now. That's the compassionate side of the man. He knew what he needed to do at the moment. We gave the woman backstage passes, so she had the best seats in the house. And afterwards, she had dinner with Dr. Viktor Frankl and me. A wonderful, wonderful woman. That acquaints you a little bit with that man. To date, Viktor Frankl is alive and well, 87 years old in Vienna, Austria. I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago, perhaps a month ago. I speak German fluently, and half of the conversation was in English, and half was in German. The part that was in German, I kept getting looks from my wife like, "What are you talking about?" So I translated for him, which helped. He has made 56 worldwide lecture tours and is planning on a 57th as soon as his health will allow him. Meanwhile, I'll fill in the shoes very gladly and with a great deal of honor. That tells you a little bit about Viktor Frankl, the man. That tells you a little bit about where he came from and what he regards as self-esteem, what he regards as motivation, and what he regards as meaning in life. Let me tell you a little bit about his theory, logotherapy. Logotherapy is founded upon 3 basic principles. Principle number 1, life has meaning under all circumstances. I repeat, all circumstances. And you go, "But Dr. Long, what if things are boring? What if they are mundane? What if there is no adventure? How can life have meaning?" I tell you the following story, which demonstrates that life can have meaning under all circumstances. One of my heroes in life is a garbage collector. His name is Kazimir Popilski. Mr. Popilski, for over 30 years, has driven a garbage truck around the outskirts of Warsaw, Poland. The same streets, year after year, day after day, month after month. Mr. Popilski gets a new truck about every 5 or 6 years, but he picks up the same garbage. How can Mr. Popilski have meaning in a job that is so boring? Mr. Popilski takes 1 vacation day per year. That's it. The other 364 days out of the year, as he is going along his garbage route, Mr. Popilski takes a few brief moments at each stop to sift through the garbage. When sifting through the garbage, he pulls out the broken and discarded toys that people have thrown away, unworthy of keeping. They'd rather buy some new ones. These aren't worth fixing, they're broken, throw them away. Kazimir Popilski very gently puts the toys in the front of the garbage truck, throws the garbage in the back, and goes on to the next stop. At the end of the evening, Mr. Popilski takes all of the broken, discarded, unworthy toys to a workshop in the back of his house and places them there. He then goes inside and has dinner with his wonderful wife every evening. After dinner and the time that they share together, he goes to his workshop in the back and works on repairing the toys. Over the course of the year, he fixes these broken, worthless toys. And the one day that Mr. Popilski takes off per year is Christmas Day. On that day, he gets literally into bags and puts all of the repaired, fixed toys into the bags and drives around orphanages in Warsaw. Every orphanage has children in it who are ignored at Christmas, but Kazimir Popilski gives them a toy that he has repaired, which other people in the world have deemed worthless. That is how Mr. Popilski makes driving a garbage truck a meaningful life, to enrich the Christmas, the holiday of children who otherwise would go without a present. He is a hero. The second principle of logotherapy. Logotherapy maintains that the search for meaning is the primary motivator of human behavior. The primary motivator is not pleasure. It's not power. It's meaning. It's a purpose. It's a reason for what we do in our lives. And I offer to you as testimony to this the following true story. In one of the concentration camps, some rotted potatoes had been stolen. You must remember, the people in the concentration camps of World War II worked in sub-freezing temperatures for 14 hours a day. Their daily nourishment was 5 ounces of watery soup and one piece of bread. The potatoes had been stolen to enrich their diet. The Nazis were outraged. They were angry that the potatoes had been stolen. They lined up the prisoner population of the entire camp and said, "We want to know who the guilty party is. We want to know now, or we will begin killing every 10th prisoner." Not one finger was raised. Not one voice was heard. No one would betray the guilty man. So down the line the Nazis went. Number 1, number 11. 21, 31, 41, 51. As each one was called, they stepped out and started walking toward the gas chambers. As fate would have it, the numbers fell upon a man who was one of the few men left in the camp who it was known his family was alive. Here was a man who had the chance, at least the opportunity, to get out of this hellhole with his family intact. Instantly, the man behind him, a Catholic priest named Father Colby, stepped forward and said, "May I please die in this man's place?" The Nazis were only interested in numbers, And they said, yes, if you were fool enough to do it, go ahead and die. Father Colby quietly walked to the gas chamber in 1942 with his head held high, with dignity, and Father Colby died. In 1942. I don't believe Father Colby died because it was pleasurable. I don't think Father Colby died because it gave him a sense of power. I think Father Colby offered his life because he was afforded the ultimate challenge of life. To transform what we practice and what we are preaching into what we actually do. Father Colby, trained in the ministry, had been taught to sacrifice for one's fellow human being and to serve his understanding of God was what he should do. He sacrificed himself biologically in 1942. Father Colby is alive in Orange, Texas in 1993. He found a meaning in his life by doing what he had always preached people should do. And the third principle of logotherapy, the freedom or the availability to choose meaning is available to everyone, no matter of your age, no matter of your race, no matter how rich or poor you may be. Meaning in life is available to you. Most people don't find it. Most people don't realize it, but it's available. No matter what the circumstances, no matter what the adversity, meaning in life is available. I'll offer as testimony to this principle the following example. While I was doing a doctoral internship at the University of Houston, one of the rotations I had was serving as a counselor at the MD Anderson Cancer Institute in Houston, Texas. I counseled patients with cancer. I also counseled their families with cancer. One of the people who was also a hero of mine was a nurse I became familiar with and came to know, who worked on the children's cancer ward at MD Anderson. I shall call her Sharon. Sharon had devoted over 30 years of her life helping children, babies, with leukemia, with brain tumors, comforting them in their misery, helping them understand, even when they had no family there, that their life had a meaning and a purpose, up to and including the final breath. Sharon and I worked together on many cases, and after I finished my rotation at MD Anderson, we sort of lost track of each other. A few months later, I was given a call at the University of Houston. One of the other nurses called me and said, "Jerry, I have very, very terrible news." So what is it? "Do you remember Sharon?" "Yes, I do." "Sharon has cancer, and nobody has seen her in 2 weeks." I said, "Oh my God, what do you know?" "Well, shortly after you left MD Anderson, she became weak and she felt low on energy. She wasn't sure what was wrong, so she went to the doctor. They did a checkup and they found out that she had cancer over her entire body. It had metastasized and had spread in her lungs, in her brain, in her pancreas, in her liver, in her stomach, in her intestines. It was everywhere. They could not operate. Chemotherapy was of no use. Sharon was given 3 months to live. by the experts. It is understandable, I believe, that she fell into a great, deep depression, and no one had seen her for 2 weeks. Upon finding this out, I went to Sharon's apartment. The woman I saw was not the woman I remembered. She had not bathed in 2 weeks. She had not taken care of herself. Everything was a mess. She was very, very lonely, very, very sad, and very, very depressed. Understandably so. I spent many hours with Sharon that day, talking with her, trying to support her, love her, and give back to her. After a while, her attitude perked up and she smiled. A little bit, ever so faint. But she was still weak because the cancer was taking its toll on her body. Finally, before I left, I looked at her. And some of you may think this callous and rude, but this is what I did because it is what my gut and what my heart told me to do. I said, Sharon, for over 30 years you have dedicated your life. Your mission in life has been to help children with the very disease you now have understand that they can have self-esteem, that they can be motivated to go on with what life was left, and that they can have meaning in life. And here you are sitting in your own pity pot. Why don't you, Sharon, practice what you have preached for over 30 years? I turned around and I left. The next day, Sharon was at MD Anderson. Due to the fact that she had cancer, she could not perform her duties as a nurse any longer. However, she became a candy striper. How many of you in the audience tonight know what a candy striper is? They're the most powerful people in the hospital. They wear the uniforms and they push around the pastry carts with donuts and croissants and juice and coffee. And if the patient is allowed to have them, then they give them to them. They feed them to them. But you see, the candy stripers don't have to look at a diagnosis. They don't have to write down things on charts like medications given, amount of urinary output, time the IV was changed, when the operation will occur. The candy stripers can afford that tremendously large 5 minutes of time to have a decent conversation with you. And Sharon volunteered as a candy striper, going around the entire hospital talking to people, comforting them, because they knew she had cancer. She was traveling down the road they were traveling down. There was a way that those patients could identify with her that they could not identify with any other nurse or any other doctor. Sharon worked for about 2.5 months as a candy striper. 3 months after she had been to the doctor, Sharon died. She did. 2 days after her death, I received a letter in the mail. She had written it a few days before she died and given it to a friend, stating to the friend, "Mail this to Jerry along only after I die." It's one of my most valued possessions, and while it is long and beautiful and glorious, I shall share with you the last sentence of that letter, which demonstrates that meaning is available to everyone. And the last sentence read, "Jerry, thank you for coming to my apartment and kicking me in the butt. The past last 3 months of my life have been more meaningful than the previous 30 years. Love, Sharon. Sharon discovered meaning the last 3 months of her life. There are many ways to discover meaning. There are many ways to do it. You can do it creatively, through the unique expression of who you are as a human being. Building the best highway that you can build. Digging the best ditch that you can dig. Perhaps giving the best speech that you can give. All are creative ways that each of us may derive meaning in life. We may also derive meaning through our experience enjoying a sunset, enjoying music, experiencing another person in their uniqueness through the relationship we call love. A friend, a spouse, a father-in-law, a mother, a father, a mother-in-law. All of these relationships we experience through love, and we may derive meaning in that way. And the third way that we may derive self-esteem, that we may be motivated, and that we may find meaning in life, is through modifying our attitude. What is an attitude? Can anyone show me an attitude? An attitude is intangible. You can't see it. It is inside you. You can be robbed of everything. The clothing that you wear, you can be starved. You can be beaten. You can be abused. But no one can ever take from you the freedom to choose your attitude. It is intangible. It cannot be held like a broken leg or a broken neck. You can give it up. You can relinquish it. You can let other people have it. And you can let other people control your life. But that freedom is up to you. And I offer to you the following example of a young man who chose to exercise his freedom of attitude. There is a 12-year-old, or there was a 12-year-old young black man who lived in the ghettos of San Francisco, California. His family was poor because, you see, his father had abandoned the family. And his mother, having 4 children, worked 3 jobs to try to put rice and beans on the table. This young man had rickets, which is a disease of the bone. He could not walk without the assistance of braces and crutches. The only way the young man had braces and crutches was because the March of Dimes had paid for them. His family couldn't afford them. This young man's hero in life was Jim Brown, the famous National Football League running back. Jim Brown played for the Cleveland Browns, and the Cleveland Browns were coming to Candlestick Park to play the San Francisco 49ers. This 12-year-old, young, disabled, black man wanted to go see his hero. So what did he do? He went to the stadium and waited, standing on his crutches. After halftime, the security guards let their guard down and the young man snuck into the stadium. And he climbed up in the stands. And he looked down just like I'm looking at you. And there was Jim Brown. his hero, was on the football playing field, running, and the young man's eyes were wide. And he went, my hero is down there. And he looked at them. The young man didn't stay up in the stands the whole game. Halfway through the fourth quarter, he left. And he went down hobbling on his crutches and his braces to the tunnel where the football players would be leaving after the game to go back to the locker room and shower. The young man hid behind a concrete banister, a concrete beam. He was skinny, so he could stand behind there. Sure enough, the football game was over. And all of the football players began to file by, going to the locker room to shower, shave, and get ready. Jim Brown, his hero, came walking by. The young man stepped out, holding himself up with his crutches, and said, Mr. Brown. And Jim Brown stopped, looked at him and said, yes, kid, what is it? You're my hero. I admire you. And Jim Brown said, that's great, kid. Keep up the good work. Turned around and went back to the locker room. The young man had high self-esteem. He was motivated. And for the second time, he looked at Jim Brown and said, Mr. Brown? And Jim Brown turned around and said, yes, what is it, kid? You don't understand. You're my hero. I admire you. I have posters of you all over the walls of my bedroom. I have newspaper clippings all over my room. And Jim Brown, kind, looked at the young man and said, that's very good, kid. I can see that you've overcome a lot in your life. Keep up the good work, you'll do well. Would you like an autograph? Keep it up. And Jim Brown turned around and walked toward the locker room for the third time. The 12-year-old crippled young man said, Mr. Brown? And Jim Brown turned around and said, what is it, young man? And the 12-year-old young man standing on crutches said, I want you to know something. When I grow up, I'm going to break every record you ever set. That got Jim Brown's attention. And Jim Brown set his helmet down and said, young man, what is your name? And the young man said, well, my first name is sort of complicated. It's Arandus. My middle name is James. My family name is Simpson. Most folks call me O.J. O.J. Simpson grew up and broke every damn record Jim Brown ever set. And 15 years later, they did an interview together, and Jim Brown remembered the young man at the time. He remembered him well. Very, very well. We talk about meaning in life. We talk about self-esteem. We talk about motivation. We talk about searching to improve the quality of our lives. If you will allow me, I would like to indulge myself and tell you the following story, which is a parable, but in fact, in many ways is true. There was a young man who was born in the Holy Land of Southeast Texas. Orange, Texas. He grew up and went to school in the public school district. As he attended public school in Orange, Texas, other students began to see that he had a gift. There was something about this man, about this young man, that was special. They sought advice from him. They wanted to get to know him better. And so they sought counsel from him. The young man didn't know what the gift was. He was a little bit hurt. He wasn't sure. All of the students, and in fact many of the teachers, sought advice from the young man in high school. The young man believed, as he was being educated, that he had lived many lives and in many different lands. Other people sought counsel, and after graduating high school, despite this many people asking him for his time and his advice, the young man had learned lesson number 1 of life. There is no such thing as a problem without a gift for you in its hands. After graduating high school, the young man became an automobile mechanic. And he went to work in an automobile repair shop in Orange, Texas. But they wouldn't leave him alone. The crowds kept coming. They wanted his counsel. This man was wise, although he was only 19 or 20 years of age. Pretty soon, the head of the automobile repair shop said, "We can't keep this going. We have to fix cars. And so many people are coming that we can't do what we are here to do. You're going to have to go somewhere else." The young man went out to the countryside to preach what he had to say. And the young man had learned lesson number 2 of life. The events of your life have purpose. What you choose to do with them is up to you. The young man went out to the countryside and began to talk to the people. They not only called him a counselor, they began to call him a master. And this scared him. And he said, "I'm no different than you." But they said, "Oh yes, you have a gift. You have a special gift that we do not have." And he said, "No, I do not. Let me tell you a story." And he told them the following story. There was once a colony of creatures who lived along the bed of a stream. For generation after generation after generation, the only way of life these creatures had known was to cling to the rocks on the side of the stream. This was their way of life. Under this colony, there was born a youngster who clung to the rocks, just as everybody else was supposed to do. But this young creature became bored, and pretty soon decided, if I cling to the rocks, I will die of boredom. I must let go and take a risk. I must motivate myself to search. The other people around him, the other creatures, said, "You are a fool. You are an idiot. It is the way of our people to cling to the rocks." But the young man said, "I will die of boredom." The young creature said, "I will die of boredom. I must let go." And he let go of the rocks. The stream, as they had told him, threw him downward, and his body was battered, bruised, and bloodied. But by taking a risk, by having self-esteem, and by looking for the meaning of what the stream had to offer, pretty soon the current lifted the creature up, and the creature floated in freedom. And the counselor, the master, had learned the 3rd lesson of life. Argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. So the master, pretty soon, because of the power of his message, became called Messiah. And then people started to call the master Savior. And it scared him. because he thought himself no different than them. And the master, this young man, who was now in his 20s and 30s, sought his own form of counsel and went to the top of a mountain looking for an answer. He didn't know what to do. In searching for his answer, he received a message. The message was simple and yet eloquent. Go forth and live life. And so the master came down from the mountain, and the thousands of people who were out there waiting to hear every word that he said listened. And this is what the master said: I quit. They were silent. But the master had learned the fourth lesson of life. In order to live free, you must sacrifice order. It's not always an easy sacrifice. Before the master left them, he said, I have one more thing I shall tell you. The master said, what if God himself asked you to suffer tortures, pain, to go through the agony and anguish of hell? If you had to do so to help the suffering, what would you do? And thousands of people said, yes, we would do it. Honor to be hanged, a glory to go through suffering and torture, if that is what is asked of us. And the master said, but what if you perceive as the same God look at you and made the following request? Go forth from this day forward and be happy. And the crowd was silent. Go forth and be happy. What a novel concept. And the master had taught them the fifth lesson of life. What the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls butterfly. And the master had told them and shown them and demonstrated to them that he was no different than them. That they all had the power to do with their lives what they wanted to do with their lives. They all had the power to have self-esteem. They all had the power to be motivated. And they all had the power to find the meaning in their lives. And therefore, the master had learned the sixth lesson of life. You were never given a wish or a dream without also being given the power to make it come true. You may have to work for it, however. And as the crowd slowly went about their ways, the master said, let me give you one more lesson of life, the seventh lesson. And he told them this: here is a test to discover if your mission on earth is finished. If you're alive, it's not. And the crowd laughed. That's the parable that I want to tell you. Now let me tell you a true story. There is a mountain in the country of Switzerland. It is not the tallest mountain. It is by far not the steepest mountain, but it is the most difficult mountain to climb. Climbers from around the world come to this mountain to test their skill, to see how good they are at mountain climbing. But you see, when they come to this mountain, they are not really testing how good they are at climbing mountains. They are not really testing their mountain climbing ability. What they are testing is their character. What they are testing is their integrity. What they are testing is their self-esteem, their motivation, and their meaning in life. It's a very dangerous mountain. Many people, in attempting to climb that mountain, have died. At the base of the mountain is a cemetery. In that cemetery are buried many people who have died in the attempt to climb that mountain. I shall never, ever forget the tombstone of one individual who was buried in that cemetery. It has the name David Jacobson. It has the year of his birth and the year of his death. And the only other inscription upon that tombstone is the epitaph, which reads, "He died climbing." Not sleeping, not loafing, not waiting to see if life was going to give him a gift, but trying, climbing, searching for self-esteem, searching for motivation, searching for a meaning in his life. He died trying. And that is what all of you tonight are doing right now. Otherwise, you would not be here. You would be at home, eating potato chips and watching television. But you're searching and you're climbing, and hopefully you are receiving a gift. Self-esteem, motivation, and meaning in life are ultimately about caring. They're ultimately about loving. They're ultimately about giving a damn when nobody else in the world seems to. A lot of people care about me. A lot of people help me. My students, my patients, my colleagues, my friends, and my family give to me much more than I ever give to them. Some of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned in my life, and I'm 33, I'm not afraid to admit it. You can see the gray, but that's okay. Some of the most valuable lessons that I've ever learned are the lessons of love given to me by my wife, who is sitting in the audience. I've learned those lessons from her. And I've learned more from her and from my students out there, and from my colleagues and my teachers than any professor I ever had in graduate school. It's about caring, it's about giving, it's about trying. And you will find that self-esteem and motivation and meaning in life will naturally happen when you give those gifts. And I close, before I will be happy to entertain any questions, with the following true story. When in Houston, Texas, I was in clinical practice doing psychotherapy with a lot of patients. Their problems ranged from mild adjustment problems to being very suicidal. It was not unusual for me to get a call at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. an emergency would arise, somebody wanted to die, or I would get a call from Bentab or Herman Hospital saying, we need your help, we have a crisis. One night the phone rang, and due to my physical challenge, I use a speakerphone. I answered the phone, and I slowly came away and said, hello. They said, is this Jerry Long? Yes, it is. The next words I heard uttered echoed and shall forever echo in my mind. And the woman on the other end said, I want to die. I woke up very quickly, as a matter of fact. She said, I want to kill myself. I truly want to die. But I read an article in the paper about you, and one of my friends said that before I killed myself, I should call you. So I decided to do it. I thanked her. We started talking. She said, Jerry, I'm not a student of yours. I never have been. I'm not a patient of yours. I never have been. But one of my friends was a student in your Introduction to Psychology class. And she told me, you better call him. And that's what I'm doing. I talked with her at 2:30 in the morning. We spent half an hour on the phone. As 3 a.m. approached, and you lose track of time, I said, and let me make up a name for her, Susan. Would you please agree to at least one thing with me? Because you see, during the conversation, she really hadn't changed her attitude. And during the conversation over the speakerphone, I heard Susan cock a revolver and put it to her head, getting ready to blow her brains out. I said, can you promise me one thing? Would you please at least talk to me face to face tomorrow morning? I will meet you at my office. After that, whatever you do is up to you. Will you at least agree to that with me? And Susan said, yes, I can agree to that. I'll hold off that long. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I went out to the waiting area. And it was obvious to me that the only strange face was that of Susan. And I said, my name is Jerry Long. Susan, please. And she rose up. And I said, why don't you come on back? And she came on back to my office. And we got in, and she had shut the door. Susan did not even sit down on the chair or the sofa that were in my therapy office. But she looked at me and she said, Jerry Long, if for one moment you think all of those wonderful arguments and all of those wonderful reasons you told me last night about why we should continue living life, about why self-esteem was achievable, about why motivation was achievable, about why life had meaning, up to and including the final breath, made one bit of difference, and you're sadly mistaken. Now, as a therapist, there's an idea that became a deodorant commercial slogan, never let them see you sweat. When Susan told me that everything I'd said didn't make one bit of difference, I didn't sweat, but I got real nervous inside. She paused and took a breath and looked at me and said, but I'll tell you what made the difference. I woke you up at 2:30 in the morning. Instead of saying, look, why don't you call Crisis Hotline? Instead of saying, I'm sorry, you're not a student of mine, you'll have to talk to someone else. Instead of saying, you're you're not a patient of mine, call another therapist. Instead of even saying, why don't you call my secretary in the morning and I'll fit you in when I have time. You talk to me. You listen to me. You gave me almost half an hour of your time, and you didn't even know who I was. After we hung up the phone, I thought, if this stranger is willing to give me half an hour of his time, maybe I should give life a second chance. Susan turned around and left the room. I didn't hear from her for a few months. And then I got a phone call. She no longer wanted to kill herself. She was about to become happily married. And at the last contact with Susan, she was happily married with 2 beautiful, glorious children. And all it took was 30 minutes to change that potential suicide into a glorious life. Susan gifted me with that. Simply 30 minutes of my time. You have honored me with an hour of yours. Thank you very much. I will be happy to answer questions, to field questions. Most of you, I think, know I will answer anything in the world. Don't laugh too much. Please feel free. Yes, ma'am. What is your name? Hi, Brenda. What motivated me to become a what? Psychologist? Hell, I don't know. Brenda, people often ask me that question. And they usually go, it's a long way from a professional baseball pitcher to a psychologist. How did we get there? Well, you need to remember this. When I was 17, throwing a baseball 95 miles an hour, and I was warming up in the bullpen getting ready for the game, I would stop warming up when the little leaguers came up with their baseballs or their gloves or their programs or whatever. They wanted an autograph from the hometown hero. Because I considered it a responsibility to serve those young people. And the common denominator was I was interested in people. I cared about people. Whether I was pitching baseball, whether I was doing therapy, or whether I was teaching, or whether I was giving a speech. And when I read that first book, which I talked about at the beginning, that touched me very deeply. I identified with many aspects of that book. And it's about helping people. You can help people no matter what your profession is in. What motivated me was that for some reason, and I'm not sure why, and I don't worry about it too much or I'll mess it up. There's something going on whereby I'm able to help people improve the quality of their lives. As long as that happens, I'm going to keep doing it. Period. That answer. It wasn't too much of a political answer. I didn't dodge the question. Yes, what's your name? did not hear her question. She asked if I was selfish when I was 17. Yep. Still am sometimes. When I was 17, I was headstrong, and I still am. That's my wife. The problem was I was stubborn in the wrong direction then. I was stubborn in a negative direction. And all of that energy, all of that stubbornness was put in a negative direction. I was selfish. I was too self-centered. Now, we need to take care of our needs. We need to meet our needs. But what I have learned is that to truly be at peace with oneself, to have high self-esteem, to be motivated to live life to the fullest, and to have a meaningful life, you need to give to others. You have to do that. And so I've got more energy now than when I was 17 and an athlete. It's channeled in a different way. But when I was 17, I was just like all of us. I knew everything about the world. I knew how it operated, and my parents were dumb. When I was 25, I learned they were a lot smarter than I. Sure. I'm a human being. Sir, your name? You're my favorite student? One of mine. The title is Man's Search for Meaning. I've given all my copies away. So, Walden Books, be Dalton, they have it, or they can order it. It's about 200 pages long, probably 200 of the best pages you'll ever read in your life. I'm sorry, your name? Belinda. From my experiences, how to build self-esteem? Yeah. Richard Bach, the author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, said it much better than I can. So let me quote Mr. Bach. Find what you most want to do in life. Think about this. Find what you most want to do in life. Do it no matter what. And by doing that, you will be guaranteed two things. A very difficult, but a very happy life. That is the way to build self-esteem. You cannot step outside and go, I'm going to have high self-esteem. It won't work. It just won't work. You do the things that are meaningful, the causes to which you dedicate your life, the people with whom you want to associate, and having high self-esteem, and being motivated, and having a meaningful life is going to be a byproduct of all of that. That's how you do it. It's not very complicated. It's just difficult to do. Yes, sir. What's your name again?
Carol.
Carol.
Teaching versus private practice. Do you find one more rewarding than the other, or equally?
Carol's question was, what do I find more rewarding, teaching or private practice? Yes.
Also.
Both in different ways. I believe that ultimately both are for the service of people, and that is to improve and enrich and enhance the quality of their lives. How it's done is different. Way down deep, People, what am I? God, it pays lousy. That's on tape. Others? Yes, go ahead. Tips as to how to instill self-esteem in children at a very young age. Praise them, love them, encourage them, nurture them. Don't coddle too much. Please don't be too harsh with them either. Discipline and helping guide them is what a parent can best do, is to guide. Allow them independence within certain boundaries. Okay? But let them find their own way. My mother tells me one of the most difficult lessons she has ever had to learn in life was to allow me to fall down and pick myself back up. By her having the courage to allow me to find the courage to pick myself back up instead of relying on someone else to do it for me, built my self-esteem. So it's a very, very fine line you need to walk. Support your children, love your children, be there for your children. Sometimes you have to put your foot down. But above and beyond anything else, love them. Yes, your name? Kathy?
How do you deal with people that try to tear down your self-esteem?
How do you deal with people who try to tear down your self-esteem? Someone who tries to put you down, someone who feels bad about themselves, has low self-esteem, insecurity, whatever you want to call it, many times will resort to the practice of putting you down, finding something wrong with you. What happens here is this. By putting you down, by finding something wrong with you, they artificially elevate themselves. That's a temporary solution. Because for a little while, while they put you down, they feel higher. Ultimately, they have low self-esteem. And they need help very badly. The phrase is, when you're in a power struggle, lose. If somebody is bound and determined to control you and think that they're better than you, that's fine. If you know within yourself who you are, what you're about, and what's really important in life, then what they have to say in an attempt to put you down really doesn't matter. They have to discover for themselves. To the degree that they're putting you down involves abuse, if you let it keep happening, then ultimately you are inflicting it upon yourself. You have to draw a line to maintain your self-esteem. If in your heart of hearts you know what you did was right, if you believe it to be right, then stand by your principles. Explain, but there is no need to defend or justify if what you did was truly the right thing to do. If they still find fault with it, perhaps they should look in the mirror.
The best way to be able to deal with that is get it off
distance yourself? Maybe. That's a political answer. Maybe. It depends upon the relationship. If they are worth it, if the relationship is worth it, you need to keep trying. There's this word that many people have forgotten about, and the word and the action is compromise. And the one that means compromise is work. Sometimes the best thing to do is to leave. Sometimes the best thing to do is to distance yourself temporarily or permanently. It goes both ways. Space, be it short term or long term. But sometimes what it boils down to is just long, hard, painful work. It takes two. You can't do it alone. We all need help. We all need help. I needed help getting on this stage. I'll need help getting off. But I'm not going to help. But they don't want help themselves. Love them. Set aside time to where you can truly express that love and the fact that you believe that they need the help and they have the right to refuse it and you have the right to offer it. What do you do then? You're not responsible for their lives. They are responsible for their lives. You can guide them and help them, support them and nurture them. You can't force them. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can lead somebody to therapy, but you can't make them better.
But it should be a therapist, right?
Depends on the case. It just depends. So I'll give you another chance. Go ahead.
This is very simple.
God, that's what they taught me. I started graduate school, they said, this is very simple. Yeah.
Okay. Is a psychiatrist more important than a psychologist?
Remain socially accepted. No, ma'am. No person is more important than another. When I was born, it said Jerry, Linda, Long, Julie. It didn't say Doctor. And it's still done.
Why do I have more time with my psychologist than I do my psychiatrist?
psychologist is a different human being than your psychiatrist. There are good apples and bad apples everywhere, anywhere, in every profession. There are great accountants and lousy accountants. There are great psychologists and lousy psychologists. There are great psychiatrists and lousy psychiatrists. There are great students and there are lousy students. It amounts to the character and the integrity, the things that I've been talking about of the human being, no matter what the title or the profession. Right after I broke the neck, what about it? Did I maintain self-esteem? Yeah. And we were honest with you all. You know, I went from pitching a baseball 95 miles an hour and not being able to scratch my nose. And that was frustrating. I couldn't control my body. And that was frustrating. Even to this day, when I want to reach up and grab a book off of a shelf, I can't do it. That's frustrating. But you learn ways to go around, ways to accommodate, ways to improve the quality of your life. And while there are many things that I cannot physically do, I challenge you to find one that I will find a way to do. Recently, I told a class that some of you know about me going skiing. Somebody just went. I've been skiing. And I get on the huge sled, and they let go, and down I go. And trees don't move. And so when you break a few toes, you break a few toes. And as I'm getting strapped into the sled, people gather around and go, "Good God, Ethel, what's he doing? What is he doing? He's living." Did it suffer a blow? Yes, it suffered a blow. Is my daily life frustrating? Yes, and so is every one of yours. It's what you make of it, and how you deal with it. We have bad days and we have good days. Which way is the scale tipped? Yes. Yes, I do. I have a passion for teaching. I love teaching. I want to help improve the quality of every human being with whom I come in contact because they improve the quality of my home. Been to a lot of different countries. for some reason I give different speeches about different topics, and it touches people. This touches me. What goes around comes around. I really believe that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I believe that with a conviction that I cannot measure either. And I shall continue to do it until my last breath, which is a long time away. Nobody can turn me around. A lot of people helped turn me around. There you go, Bob. Yes, sir. No. I did not feel sorry for myself. I got frustrated, I got upset, I got sad at the inability to do things I wanted to do. From time to time, as I openly said, I still do. But I never felt sorry for myself, like the world did me wrong, something like that. No. I was laying in a hospital bed with metal bolts screwed into my skull to stabilize my spine. I said, all right, now what can we do? Let's go. Let's do something. I had to try. That's all I had was try. If I tried, I didn't know what would happen. 2 weeks later, I could have been dead. Or 17 years later, I could be in front of you speaking. What's happened? Right. I was headstrong and strong-willed. I just had to learn to channel it positively instead of negatively, productively instead of destructively. Nor have I ever been, nor can I ever foresee myself being a passive person. Calm, passive. Extreme shock, dismay, horribly saddened, disappointed. They knew that my dream of becoming a professional baseball player had been shattered, and the doctors told them that I probably would not live. And on 2 occasions, I was clinically dead. Now I'm clinically alive. It was very, very rough on them, and I have written about this, and I still maintain it. I think my biggest regret about breaking my neck is the burden that it caused my family. It was hard on them. And I just I went and had people stretch my legs and give me food, throw me in whirlpools, do all kinds of stuff. It's not as fun as it sounds. Wonderful. Our family is extremely, extremely close. We have our differences, but we respect those differences, and that is the key. I'm gonna open one more question, then I'll say something. Make it a good